Hello and welcome, my name is Savannah, and today we're going to be talking about a Sims game that you probably didn't know existed or was supposed to exist before it was unceremoniously cancelled, SimsVille. SimsVille was a game under development by Maxis for 2 years before being suddenly shelved shortly before it was meant to be released. The game was a cross between two of Maxis' biggest titles, SimCity and The Sims 1. It was meant to be a sort of expanded version of The Sims where you could manage an entire town of Sims instead of just one household. It featured city builder elements from SimCity but on a smaller scale. Rather than a large metropolis, it was more of a village builder. What made the game so unique and interesting was the fact that, unlike in most city builder games, you could view each individual resident's needs, skills, interests, and more. It was much more personal than the cold city management of SimCity. For those tuned in to releases of EA, and specifically Maxis in 2001, it was a highly anticipated title. Unfortunately, however, in September 2001, it was abruptly cancelled. So what happened? What went so wrong that a game that was seemingly destined for at least mild success was suddenly thrown away just months before it was supposed to be released? That is what we are going to be diving into today. But before we get started, be sure to subscribe for more videos like this one on The Sims or other life sim games. So anyway, without further ado, let's load into SimsVille. The first trailer for SimsVille was initially available as a sneak preview on SimCity 3000 Unlimited and The Sims Live in Large CDs in 2000. The idea for the game was conceived by the SimCity team and was developed by members of both the SimCity and The Sims teams. The project received some minor input from Will Wright, the creator of The Sims, but he was not actively involved. SimsVille was officially announced to the public in May 2001, when EA showed off gameplay previews at E3. The display showed the town, SimsVille, full of Sims strolling about, talking to each other, and going about their lives. The preview featured a large mansion in the town inhabited by Will Wright, who threw a party and invited several Sims over. Upon clicking on a house or a Sim, a menu pops up at the bottom of the screen that gives you details on the selected Sim, their jobs, skills, friendships, current actions, etc. While the E3 preview did not show an overwhelming amount of gameplay, various interviews with members of the SimsVille team revealed loads more. Similar to The Sims, the game featured 3 modes: build mode, buy mode, and live mode. In build mode, players could construct buildings and infrastructure. In buy mode, you could buy specific items to decorate the town to increase Sim needs and appeal to their interests. However, unlike in The Sims, you could not decorate inside Sims' homes. In live mode, players could indirectly control Sims. They could not directly control their actions like in normal Sims games, but you could encourage certain behaviors, like having a household throw a party like Will Wright in the demo. Interestingly, when you first installed the game, it would search your computer's hard drive for The Sims and automatically import households you made in The Sims, so your first residents would be your households from your Sims game. You could also import households from The Sims manually, and there also appeared to be plans for players to someday be able to import their SimsVille towns into future SimCity games. Like any standard city builder, players would be able to populate, build up, and manage a town, charge taxes, etc. You would be able to make your own town from scratch or build upon a pre-made one. However, in addition to managing the town itself, players were also tasked with managing the needs of the individual Sims in the town. The main objective of the game was to add things to the world to increase the happiness of each Sim in the town, in turn improving the overall overall atmosphere of the town. The environment of your town was heavily based on the success and happiness of its residents. For example, if your town had too many unemployed Sims, buildings would become worn down and areas would become slums. The aforementioned E3 demo also showed a version of SimsVille where unemployment was high. In that version, Wheelwright's home was abandoned. Instead of lively commercial businesses, there were adult theaters and liquor stores, and fires would constantly start around town, causing buildings to simply burn to the ground due to there being no fire station. Having low unemployment and lots of high-earning residents will result in a more built-up, polished town. Sims personalities would influence which shops or businesses might pop up in town. Assistant producer for the game, Jenna Chalmers, gave the example, "You might have a family that's really into jazz. It might be to your interest to move a family with similar interests into the city, because they might start a jazz club or even host jazz events at the local park, which will bring up your city rating." Players could also build structures and buildings to accommodate the needs of residents. For example, if there was an unemployed Sim in town with a high engineering skill, a player could choose to add buildings or structures that they could work in turn decreasing the town's unemployment rate. Other interesting mechanics included some sort of scrapbook feature, although the specifics of that I could not find. Additionally, when businesses in town weren't doing well, it was visible. The buildings would start to look run down and dirty, sometimes even having broken windows. Also, the game was possibly going to feature some more mature elements, like adult theaters and armed robberies. Finally, one of the game's most interesting features was its 3D engine, which The Sims and SimCity both lacked at the time. This allowed players the ability to zoom in on buildings and Sims, and spin the camera 360 degrees. In my opinion, the game seemed pretty interesting and had a lot of potential, so what went wrong? As I stated, the game was under development for 2 years. Initially, the game was supposed to be released in 2001. However, it was delayed to early 2002, sometime between January and March. Unfortunately, on September 21st, 2001, Maxis announced the game had been cancelled, and those working on the game were put back to work on SimCity and The Sims. At the time of the game's cancellation, the director of Maxis at the time, Patrick Buchner, stated in an interview with GameSpot that the game was, quote, about 60% complete and was supposed to be released in March 2002. Maxis stated the cancellation was primarily due to quality control issues, going on to say the gameplay was, quote, less compelling as time went on. Patrick Buchner said himself that he only found the first 10 minutes of gameplay enjoyable. Also, it is important to note that the game was cancelled by Maxis itself, not EA. Buchner stated that the main reason for making the game was to fulfill Simmers' requests for their Sims to be able to go places outside of their homes, go shopping, to the bar, etc. The Sims Hot Date expansion was being developed alongside SimsVille and was released in November 2001, and it basically did all of those things but better. As a result, the game became kind of redundant. Additionally, rather than being a fun mix of the best parts of The Sims and SimCity, it seemed to be more of a watered-down version of both games smushed together. As mentioned earlier, the city builder elements were far less robust than in SimCity, and you couldn't play with Sims up close like in The Sims. That, combined with it no longer having any sort of unique features due to Hot Date's existence, made it just a boring game. In the end, 2 years of work were thrown in the trash, and the game never saw the light of day. However, parts of the game did seem to live on in future The Sims and SimCity installments. For example, the game's interface design seemed to be brought to SimCity 4, as well as the addition of Sim residents with unique personalities and the way that the atmosphere of cities altered the appearances of buildings, homes, and structures in the game. So that is the story of SimsVille. I found out about this game when I was researching for a video that I planned to make on failed life sim games, but after delving deeper into it, I felt like it was worth its own video. I feel like this game sounded super interesting and I kind of wish it wasn't cancelled, even if it might have been a bit boring. I feel like it could have still garnered a good audience, but oh well. I would love to know what you all think. Would you have played this game? Did you know about this game before this video? Let me know in the comments down below. Also, let me know if you would be interested in a series of other failed life sim games. I have a list of 2 or 3 others that I would be down to make videos on. So let me know if that would interest you in the comments below. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, feel free to leave a like and subscribe for more videos like this one. Anyway, that is all from me today. I hope you have a fantabulous rest of your day, and I hope to see you in the next video. Bye-bye!